5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Why am I calling this out?
I don't
Good
know.
evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, welcome to the South-afrifur Pawdcast. You're listening to myself, Ivan Wolf here, and we have our guest, our first guest for a new series that we're going to be starting. And I've actually lost the line already.
People of Furry?
But in any case, so our first guest is no, that's not the one. We have a completely new one, which is a lot better, which is multiculturalism in the furry fandom, pretty much.
Sweet.
Yes, that is it. Yes. And our first guest is EbonyLeopard, a man who has been in the fandom for very, very long, actually. From 1995, 96, I believe?
96.
96. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like I said, I've been in the fandom, or at least a part of the fandom, since 1996. My primary role in the fandom has been a illustrator, kind of in the quickly becoming defunct comic book realm of anthropomorphic art. And yeah, I've participated in many other conventions on the East Coast of America. And I kind of don't see myself going anywhere anytime soon, but my work production has definitely decreased a bit as I get older and as my actual profession slows me down a bit.
Okay, and is that just with respect to your illustration outside of your job? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I think like I received an injury a couple years ago to my hands due to overdrawing, and because of that,
carpal tunnel.
Sort of like a tendonitis in the wrist, where if I'm working for a long period of times, the wrist will start to tighten up, and then I have to stop what I'm doing. So definitely put a cramp in playing video games. Let me tell you, sucks.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Wow.
That.
Okay. All right, but I mean, like, maybe just walk us through some of the things that you've done here. Obviously, there is a small excerpt that we have on furry.fm itself, where we speak about, aware of the furry fandom in 1995. You've been to your first convention in Cleveland?
Yes, it was
96?
96. The Conference East, I think the one and only offshoot of the original conference, which at its time was the largest furry convention in North America.
How many people were there?
Oh man, I don't know, maybe about 300. I mean, at the time I think I was 18 or 19. So and it was pretty much the first convention of any type I had ever been to begin with. So to me, in my eyes, it seemed like tons of people were there.
Well, 300 people is pretty much tons, isn't it? Like many. So it was the first convention and the only convention in Ohio.
Well, no, it was the first Conference East convention in Ohio.
Okay.
In Cleveland, and I think it became the conference convention circuit. Period, I believe, became defunct shortly after that, due to a variety of reasons. And I think it was replaced with further confusion after that.
Okay. Huh.
Okay.
All right. What was your experience there? Like, again, one of our sort of general focuses with this series is people of other culture and how they're treated within the fandom itself. I know that obviously the fandom tries to be as open and as accepting as it possibly can be, but as we might know, there are pockets of resistance in some senses.
Well, I believe for me personally, of course, I'm speaking always as I speak today. I'm always only talking for myself. But the experience was an eye opener for me, and you have to think of it from the context of where I'm coming from. I'm an African American male, and I guess it's technically the third, or now I think we're the fourth largest city in Pennsylvania. but in a very small neighborhood, had never really traveled anywhere before. Never been, I had been to a comic book convention, which is what I thought it would be. Because of how I found out about it was in the back of a comic book back then. You didn't exactly have the internet as a whole to spread the word about conventions like that. And to the point to where it was my mother, my mother and my aunt were the ones that took me to this. And it was just an eye opener because I had never, first of all, I had never seen walking what seemed like living animal characters before. My experience prior I just always had an affinity towards cartoon themed animal characters. But I didn't know people costumed as them. And I can't remember the guy, he used to have a website, but it was like this gargoyle-like costume, which to this day, to me, is still like one of the coolest things. He's walking around, skin-tight costume, as they do. And like these wings, and he would move his hands, all of a sudden, poof, the wings popped up and like would move, in his mouth, he had like a beak, kind of looked like Brooklyn from Gargoyles. Greenish color. And I was just blown. My mind was like, oh my God, this is like the coolest thing ever. But being there, you were pretty much the only African American there, at least at the time, that I thought I was. But for me, because I've grown up in the realm of comic books and have been to a couple of like local comic conventions, the idea of being one of the few minorities there wasn't really all that a big deal. That's just kind of been a fact of my life. Of many things that I do, I tend to be among the few of what I do and what I'm involved in. And it was at this convention where I first met Max Black Rabbit.
Yes.
He just happened to be in a room, and there's like a room full of a whole lot of other guys sitting there drawing, and like, oh hey, there's another black guy here. Let me go say hi to him. We were roughly the same age. I think Max has got like 1 year on me.
He's been around for ages as well. Jeez, I can't remember a time before.
And at that point, I don't know how many conventions he had been to himself prior to that, because I didn't know he was Canadian or anything like that. It's just, but he had to probably be like 19, I want to say, at that time. And we just kind of hit it off, and that's where I first learned of the concept of persona fandom names. Because I had thought his first name actually was Max, and to learn that it really wasn't later on down the line. But it was the inspiration of seeing his character that he had made, and the name was one of the things that inspired me to create my own character, my own fan name.
All right, and walk us through your sort of choice of character and now characters.
Well, let's see. Tamar the Ebony Leopard. He was created in, I want to say, 1997, my sophomore year in college. The college I went to, from an African American standpoint, was kind of rough because there were literally about 5 of us in the entire school, and it was also like a Catholic private college. Well, not a private college, but like public college, you know what I mean, like that. Yeah. So the experiences of being a minority in a group like that, it can be tough because you don't have a lot of people who relate to you quite in the same way, but you're expected to just fit in and relate to others. So, well, to get into my college experience, it started off rough from the very first day. I had, like, for instance, a professor in my very first art class, in my very first class there, point out that I was the only African American in the room. Which
just blatantly did that.
Just blatantly out of nowhere. Very first thing he said as class started was like, "Hey, look, Shantae is the only black student that we have in the room." I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, that's true." Then the next class, he did it again. In the third class, he did it again. And I was like, I'm the only black student in this entire art department. And I believe at this time, because the college I went to used to be an all-female school previously, and I think only a couple years before it went co-ed, I believe I may have been the only African American student to ever been in the art department as a student to graduate. So, that started me off pretty rough there. So having that experience of being the only in situations, and I was, living through that. I'll admit, there's something about college that turns a person more introspective. It makes you more conscious about social and political things. And the movie Black Panther, about Hugh Newton and the Black Panther movement, had just come out, I believe, that year. And just the name of that was like, oh, Black Panther. Panthers are cool, and I do like panthers. I'm very big on cats at the time. And ironically, some of the students would call me the Black Cat because I just at that time happened to wear a lot of black clothing. Not because I was emo or anything. It was just that I was a chubby kid. Black makes you more slummy.
Yep.
So that's where I decided to go. All right, well, I don't want to go Black Panther because that sounds very obvious and on the point. Well, how about EbonyLeopard? And thus,
all right.
Thus the legend was
that's
born.
Actually pretty interesting. Thus the legend was born. Exactly
that's
that.
the legend. The Tamar part actually, that was a name that I was going to be named by my mother. She told me, because my father's name is Marcel, and the doctor who delivered me was an Asian man by the name of Dr. Tebu. Well, she liked the Tay part, and she considered blending it with my father's part of his first name, but then she went with she liked Sean as well, and she threw the Tay on the end of it.
Sean, oh yeah, fair enough. And now a lot of people do it the other way around, isn't it?
Right.
All right. Okay, and that's actually pretty interesting. So, one of the things that I kind of want to ask is obviously wouldn't necessarily say isolated, but obviously in college, how did you begin to deal with those kinds of like things? Did you sort of isolate yourself, or did you try to open up? I mean, I understand you said that you weren't emo, and I think during this time, if I'm not mistaken, like there were a lot of interesting music genres that were starting out. And I'll tell you, it's 1997, yeah.
96, 97, yeah.
Yeah. Like what was the music at the time that you were listening to? Weirdly, I'm asking because I do have a follow up to this.
Well, I was getting to a lot of rap music, more so Public Enemy, because they were very political based. They rapped about themes, about movements and stuff. R&B music, obviously, because that's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
But because you are living in a dorm or living with guys who are not like you, you're obviously introduced to a lot of different other music styles. I grew a big affinity at one point for Aerosmith.
Ooh, nice.
Like a really dig Aerosmith, and like certain rock music, like more the classic, like your classic 80s rock.
Yeah.
Journey, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Big Queen. Love me some Queen.
Oh yeah.
And still can't roll with the country music for the most part. I had a roommate from Florida. He was big into country music. That drove me crazy. But there's just something about like music that's off key.
Whiny guitars.
Do it for me. The twang I can't quite roll with. For each of their own. But yeah, so the music, the movies, it was, a big movement. But then that was in America, like the cross color movement, and just being Afrocentric movement was really beginning to build back up in the Black culture of America at that time. So,
what's the word? Afro punk. Were you familiar with it at the time?
no, I actually haven't heard of that until like a week ago, to be honest with you.
Wow.
So I had not heard of that prior to.
Huh. That's actually kind of interesting because I mean the movement started around about in the 1980s, and the music festival has been around since 2005.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I think that's more of a European thing, though.
It's weird that I've been checking up on it because obviously there's an Afropunk festival that's coming to South Africa, which is kind of awkward that it starts somewhere else and that it becomes and takes the name of like Africa and just goes like, yo, no, this is punk from, that kind of perspective. And yeah, I mean, like you have bands here like Death, Pure Hell, Bad Brains, Suicidal Tendencies, who I know, Dead Kennedys, who I think we all have at least heard of once or twice.
Yeah, all those other things just sound like I don't know, it's like
fridge magnet. It sounds like a bad metal band.
It sounds like fridge magnet poetry in an emo kid's house.
Yeah, we're talking about the era of the start of Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, so those were the soundtracks of my high school years.
Okay.
Anything
again, like I mean,
the Tony Hawk soundtrack was was essentially my high school years.
Windy makes a very bad pun on the website saying he guesses that you grew a Fur Affinity. He's let himself out, by the way.
Well, no, I've always had an affinity towards animals. I mean, from like when I was a kid, just about darn near every cartoon show on at the time had a talking animal on it. I mean, from your Hanna-Barbera to Warner Brothers and Dino-Saucers to Kissy Fur, So I was bombarded with the talking animals, but it was the Ninja Turtles that sealed the deal for sure in '89. That was the hotness that was like, wow, like this stuff can be, well, the comic book more so '84 than before the cartoon anyway. That like you're talking animals can be serious, because before that time we didn't have a term of furry. They were simply called funny animals prior to that. So you had your funny animal comics, and it wasn't until I want to say like the publication of the book Albedo by Steve Galacci, where you first truly saw the term anthropomorphic with a more public sense in the comic book community, as far as I knew anyway. And it was by finding that, and the cool thing about like the furry fandom or being quote unquote a furry at that time is that you had to work for it. You had to legit search out the stuff if that was a thing that you were into. So that meant hitting comic book shops in their back issue bins, or finding and that's really was the main thing too, is that those books would have advertisements for other stuff in them. So the furry community was all about, from my perspective, promoting other people as well. Like you're promoting yourself, but you also want to promote others as well. So you would all have all of these catalogs of other things that you could buy. And fortunately, back then, there was one central place called Mailbox Books, that it was like this giant mail-away catalog that had pretty much, if you were a furry creator, that's where you sent your stuff to. And like from portfolios to calendars to like your small press comics, and they would ship it out wherever in America. And I want to say probably globally too. and that's how you learned about people and learned who people were, and that's where you got your first information about websites. And from the websites, it would carry on from there to conventions and all of that. So
yeah.
and like you guys today, which makes me sound super old saying it like this, but like furry fans of today really got it easy when it comes to getting the materials. And I frankly, I think he kind of spoiled a little bit too, because I'm seeing this mentality of, oh, because it's on the internet, I should have access to it at any way that I want. Whereas a guy like me, if you wanted access to it, you literally had to pay for it, otherwise you didn't get it.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
we're a little
actually
less spoiled for choice in the mainstream media, at least. I mean,
Yeah.
back in the day, Hanna-Barbera and all that stuff, they were very much in the limelight. But these days, there's maybe a little bit of resurgence recently with stuff like, what's that? It's not bubblegum, is it? Fuck, stuff like kids shows like that, and obviously Zootopia, stuff like that coming
Oh,
up.
you mean Gumball?
Gumball.
Gumball.
Yeah, Adventures of
Bubble
Gumball.
gum.
Yeah, it's same thing.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It's not as prevalent as, let's say, the Hanna-Barbera stuff was in like the early, what was it, like 70s. It's certainly prevalent throughout the like 70s and the 80s, I suppose. But yeah.
I mean, like Biker Mice from Mars, for instance.
All of those, I hate to say it, are just Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ripoffs, despite the fact that I love the Biker Mice.
Pretty much, yeah. Like the Ninja Turtles changed the game dramatically, especially in the public animation media.
And then it was just like Street Sharks, Extreme Dinosaurs, all that other stuff.
Extreme! Everything's extreme!
Yeah, because it was the 90s.
Now, ironically, that's at the ebb of where you go from being a teen. It's like, oh, I'm not going to watch all that many cartoons and stuff. So, like, I was just at the end when Street Sharks and stuff was coming out. So I actually didn't watch a lot of that at that time. For one, it came on really weird hours here in Pennsylvania, where I think if you wanted to watch Street Sharks, you had to be up at like 6. And, as a teenager, anytime after 9 o'clock is almost doesn't exist,
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, I mean, like during that, I can actually sympathize with this particularly because I remember, this was before there was like timeline streamlining between like all the times, for instance, when something aired as a cartoon somewhere, as much as you could stagger the, like on state to state levels across the 4 different timelines that you guys have, it would be like, because it would have to air at 6 in the east so that it would air later in the west.
Yeah, because I haven't really thought of that. Plus, though, with network television, and we're talking like early cable, you're still looking at your major 3, 4 networks. So they still would have the staggered airing time. So like if it's 6 here on the East Coast, it still would be 6 in the West Coast. And it wouldn't be until you got to your prime time hours to where things would somewhat sync up. Yeah,
because I still remember, and I spent between 1993 to 1997 in the States, and there was one point that we were going, we'd gone on a tour of, I think, all the way to Midwest-ish America. We'd gone all the way to about Tennessee. Is it Tennessee?
Yeah.
I can't remember now. Yeah, it should be, yeah. It should be Tennessee. It should be because we went to Memphis. That's the thing.
Yeah.
My mom really wanted to see the house, the biggest house
Elvis.
Yeah. And I still remember that we'd crossed timelines, and my sister and I wanted to watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch at the time. And it was on a different time slot, and we were checking the guide, and we got like 10 minutes late because we thought that it was like half an hour or this or that. We were kind of confused as to what was going on. So I understand like the whole I think, I don't know, they moved it up by half an hour, something like that. Yeah, I didn't understand. I was like about as tall as my desk is currently.
Especially if you hit the dead spot in America where they don't choose to change the time zones at all. That's where it really gets confusing.
Yeah. So, I mean, and there was a vast proliferation of furry stuff back in the day then. I mean, again, like Biker Mice from Mars. There was, what else was there that was pretty good? Samurai Pizza Cats.
You know, I this day have never seen that show.
You really should. It's funny as all hell.
Oh no, I would love to, but like I have like people always say, "Oh yeah, this used to." I don't remember that airing at all, and you know, there's a reason for that. Is that at least when I was a kid, specific shows aired on specific networks, and if you gain, I like to say, a network loyalty to a particular network because it happens to show the shows that you like, you may have never seen any other show at that particular time slot. Like I know, for instance, I'll remember this to forever. Kissy Fur, which was a show about a father and a son bear in a swamp of what looks like Louisiana. It came on at 8 a.m. on NBC on a Saturday. Whatever else came on any other network, I could not tell you. Because I was watching Kissy Fur, and be damned if it was a rerun. I'm still watching Kissy Fur.
Nice. All right, but so I mean, this is kind of the exposure that you had at the time as well, and like when it came to the fandom as a whole, obviously it took time to find everything that you needed to find. I mean, I know that from our side in South Africa, we on internet level, back in the 2000s still, many of us were still on like dial-up modems. I remember I was still using an AMD K6.
If you were lucky, you had dial-up.
I did have dial-up, but the thing is that it was that entire thing where if you were on the internet, your mom couldn't make phone calls, and your mom would make a phone call, and then you'd be waiting for about 2 to 3 hours because she likes talking to people.
Yes.
For the internet to come back on.
I'm glad to see that's universal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, universal to I think anybody within the time frame, depending on like where or how internet was being dealt with at the time, their own age. Anybody, I think, around about from 25 onwards, now currently, probably wouldn't have as much of a problem.
Oh no, they don't know the struggle.
Yeah.
They don't know the struggle of waiting like 20 minutes for one image to download.
Oh yeah.
Goddamn
goodness me. No, like this is a legitimate problem. Like I still remember, what was it? I would have Furry Muck open on the one window, and I was like 15, 14, 16, around about this time. And because text is obviously really, really fast, it like transfers like almost immediately. That would be my connection to whatever the hell else I was doing. But I would have like my browser open, and I'd be downloading images at like 2 kilobytes per second. Sometimes 2 kilobytes per minute. So a 20 megabyte picture would take almost the entire evening.
Yeah. Folks didn't know how to downsize images they made quite as well as they do now either. So what was really bad was when like you didn't quite know what the image was to begin with. And then once you get halfway, it's like, oh man, I just wasted all this time for this.
Yeah.
No,
I still remember. I think over the weekends, I would spend at least either a Friday or a Saturday night up until morning, just trying to download images and talking on Furry Muck. Did you ever go to Furry Muck actually?
I tried Furry Muck. Like I just sucked at it though. Like the whole concept of role playing, which is weird to being an artist and somebody who writes comics. I just didn't have an imagination for for it. I don't know. There's something about me that just could not suspend disbelief, I guess, to role play as a character on the thing. That and I would get lost. I would very easily get lost when you're trying to travel somewhere and you got to remember, wait, what is the key combination to get to such and such as tavern?
Yeah. I mean, like the easiest way would obviously just go to the the
west side of the
park. West corner of the park, and just ask someone there, and hopefully someone answers you, except for maybe ignoring you for. At that point, there were many, like it's weird, and it hasn't changed at all. Like, I mean, I was there like 2004-ish. There are still people there that I met then, still on the muck, still doing whatever the hell they're doing, in their like late 40s, 50s, 60s, even just chilling there because they don't want to chill anywhere else.
I can understand that. I mean, one, you're literally with the people you know. You don't have a lot of newbies, as they say, coming in and kind of ruining things. And it's comfortable because you've, at this point, have mastered the darn thing. So there's nothing on it that you can't do, you know. Now, I see like Second Life. I've always been intrigued by that, but I just don't have the technical know-how to bother with that. So I was like, well, I'll watch it from afar. It's a neat thing, but it's not for me.
I dabble in Second Life every now and again. I particularly just, and this is pretty much the exact same experience that I had on Furry Muck. I would find 2 or 3 places that I like going to. I will go there constantly, and I will just sit and watch people carry on. And every now and again, like, you private message this person or that person, and that's kind of how it goes. And with Second Life, all you kind of need to do is, I think 2,000 Linden dollars gets you a relatively good skin, emotes and all that kind of stuff. And then you just walk around and watch other people walk around. And wow, this sounds about as boring as I think it is sometimes.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're not setting it quite well, though.
Yeah,
it's like VR chat without the fucking knuckles.
See, I suffer. Go ahead, go for it.
No, carry on. You suffer?
I was going to say, I suffer from an incredible short attention span, to where I kind of have to be, which is probably expressed in the type of art I do, to where if something takes that long, I lose interest in it very easily. And I'm aware that I have this type of character flaw, I guess. So I tend to try to stay away from things that are going to make me mentally wander for too long.
Somebody's asking about what 2,000 Linden dollars is.
Like in money terms? I have no idea.
Okay, let me go. Linden dollars to US dollars. To every $1, it's 252 Linden dollars. So it would be $10 for 2,000. That's actually not that bad. It's not super expensive.
It's $10 that some 3D artist would be getting back for their investment in the game.
Yeah. And I mean, if they keep on buying your skins, you can then buy a house, and then you can have your own private orgies. Wait, I didn't say that.
I remember the boom of that when that first started, and I was so impressed with the artists who could do that. I was like, wow, you guys go ahead and get that money. You have a skill level that I don't, and I envy, and that is awesome.
Okay. So with the way that the fandom grew between the time that you joined it and to now, obviously with the proliferation of a large amount of media, for instance, people have been, interviewed on many sort of senses now. It almost seems like we're coming to a point where furry is kind of becoming commercialized in essence.
When when you can go to Walmart and get a fursuit head, it's been commercialized.
Yeah.
That blew my mind this past December.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter and everyone was like, furry Twitter was just blowing up. It's like, guys, you guys, they have cheap fursuit heads at Walmart, like all caps, periods.
And they were disappearing. They weren't just like at Walmart sitting. I mean, they were in giant bins, and those things were disappearing. So there are a whole bunch of new proto furries out there somewhere. Those things just walk out of the store on their own.
New hatchlings, new whelps.
There's a teenager checking out Fur Affinity for the first time right now because of the.
Yeah. And then they're trying. Wait, hold on. Actually, there was a thing for this in chat. Yote, no, not Yote. Halcyon mentioned step-by-step guide to finding furry material. 1. Google furries. 2. Question your knife choices.
Yep.
You know, it's funny he says that you'll like this kind of little story.
Yeah.
When now I told you, like my first involvement was that convention, and how I first found out about anthropomorphics was through comics. But I had never heard of the term furry before going to college. And I had never used the internet before going to college because I grew up pretty poor and we didn't have a computer and stuff like that. And I never even, throughout the entirety of high school, never used a computer because at my high school, they had a strict deal to where you had to take you had to take a typing class before you could take computer. And I couldn't get a typing class just because of the scheduling of the other track that I was doing in school with all the art programs and stuff until my final final semester of my senior year. So that meant I had never used a computer. I actually went to college. And, you know, I've got I've been to the convention and I've got these comics and I wanted more. And I went to our college library, and they had computers there. And for the first time, the little librarian telling me about the internet. And I was like, well, you know, how do you look up stuff on the internet? Yeah, you got this computer screen. I generally know what a computer is, but I don't exactly know how to use this thing. Well, you use a browser. Like, well, what's a browser? Like, what am I supposed to do? Well, just type in a word, and it'll give you a list of sites that you can click on to find. Well, so I'm sitting there, and I don't know if anyone remembers Web Crawler, but that was the search engine of choice back then. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, all right, what's the word I can think of that maybe will help me find out more about these comics and stuff that I'm reading? And I don't know why I picked this word, but I just generally typed in furry because that was a general description of what they look like. And my mind was blown. At the time, I want to say there were, I don't know, maybe 500, 1,000 hits, which, you know, at the time was like, wow, oh my God, like, look at these different sites and click on and stuff. But like, of all the I always say, of all the random things I could have ever typed in to find furry stuff, to think of the word furry, and I think what was it? Fur Nation,
yeah,
and Yifco, Fur Nation and Yifco,
which turned into Yif Star, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was Yifco first, though. I could be wrong on that. But those were the first gallery sites that I ever ran across. And, you know, I was hooked after that. It was over.
Yeah, that was about the same time that... sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Oh, that was probably around the time that VLC was still a thing, or VCL.
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Yo, this is a trip. Right, but Now, I guess maybe enough reminiscing currently, where you'd met Mike and Carol Curtis,
Yes.
and you started illustrating for their book New Horizons. How did what exactly what was the exchange that you guys actually had to sort of get that going?
Well, at that meeting that I told you about where I met Max Black Rabbit,
Mm-hmm.
there's this guy named Mark Molino.
Mm-hmm.
He used to, I guess he used to be a lot more known in the fandom then than I was aware of. And he had like these stories that he wanted to do, but he needed an artist. And I can't remember if it was him that introduced me to Mike or the other way around. But
Mm-hmm.
in general, they were starting a their own self publishing because at the time they were working under the comic brand of Vision Comics, but they wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
their own little off brand thing because at that time I was reading their books, the Shanna the Panda and Catmandu. So I was a
Mm-hmm.
fan of those books, and like here are the writers, starstruck at the time, and they made me an offer. You know, I just happened to have me, and they liked it, so they decided to give me a test.
Nice.
And the
Mm-hmm.
first book story was like this lion. It was like a Lion King. I think it was supposed to be something from a Lion King Muck story, but all the characters had a Lion King like design, and I had to draw the character descriptions and draw the characters to make them look like Lion King characters.
Mm-hmm.
I studied, and this is before my mother and I we owned DVD. I rewind The Lion King on VHS so many times to get certain angles and freeze frames of character designs. I mean, looking back at it now, I did not do the best job of capturing the Lion King look, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. But at one point, I could probably have drawn anything from Lion King from head.
Sure. Okay. And 14 issues? How long did that actually take? What was the time span between
See, back then
issue
I was
10 and
really
issue 24?
back then I was really humming. The books were like every other month. So see, from 98 to I want to say maybe 2004.
Yeah.
Because I was
Wow.
at that point too, I was doing two comics at once too. So
Mm-hmm.
I would get done with one month with one, and then immediately start another. Like I look back at my younger self, it was like, man, oh my god. And I was still going to school and taking classes and studying and doing all of that, and still getting the books done at the time, as well as doing a college comic strip. So
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, like three comic strips at once, and one of them involving Extinctioner.
yes, that came in '99.
Yeah.
Uh,
What was Extinctioners about? I mean, obviously you're talking to two people who I think a large amount of our exposure comes like post 2004. I know that people sort of
Yeah.
talk about things that came before that as well. I know
mhm.
we tended to read Ozzy and Millie
Mm-hmm.
quite a
Yes.
bit,
The Class
and what
Menagerie.
was Class Menagerie, yeah. And I was always interested in there's that one guy who hangs out in the west corner of the park
Eric,
who did
Jim Grow.
hey?
Jim Grow.
Yeah, I think he did the west corner of the park comic strip, and I think it's still going.
Yep, he still pumps out strips every now and then. Yep.
Yeah. And then weirdly enough, for some reason, I also remember what's it, Coyoteville starting around about that time as well. It like
Ooh,
had. Do you remember Coyoteville?
was that like with Zoni? Was that with Zoni the Coyote?
I think it could have been. I know that he hung out with, like, if I can remember the comic strip itself, it was like a 3 to 4 panel thing. Um, and it was a coyote, and then there was a bullhead, that skull actually, and then like a little green lizard thing.
Did the coyote wear like a open vest with a little neckerchief?
He wore a neckerchief. I don't remember the open vest though.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that artist passed away actually a couple years back.
I'm truly not sure because maybe we're not talking about the same Coyoteville because I know Coyoteville was done by Draconis.
Oh, okay.
Dry.
Right. No, I am thinking
No
so.
idea. No idea. Okay, but yeah. So, so you were in all of this kind of thing because I know that between around about I think 1996 through to about 2006, there was a mass amount of web comics starting out that were furry orientated. I know that Two Kinds. When did Two Kinds start? Does anybody know?
No idea. I never really read Two Kinds.
Yeah, neither have
I've
I.
always kind of seen Two Kinds as more of like a pseudo anime
Yeah.
strip than furry, but I mean, it's obviously got that cross appeal, which is probably the
Mm.
brilliance of it to begin with, though, because he's not catering to just one audience; he's got two audiences, and um, I've seen that thing in my local comic shop. So as a collected paperback, so good on him. He's doing a great job, apparently.
Okay. All right. And so, I mean, with all of this, all the way between what was it, 1998 to 2004, you were drawing three different comic strips. Um, is this where the issues with the wrist started happening, or how
Yeah,
exactly did that happen? Was that just small desk and cramping the wrist, and what happened?
small desk. Finally got a computer of my own. Horrible sitting and typing posture,
Yeah.
and way too much overworking with my hands, to where I got like a tendonitis
Yeah. Yeah.
that got so bad that even the simple, let me tell you, you never know what muscles you use until they start to hurt. Like the simple process of just holding a pencil in my hand, I could not do for about, God, like almost 6 months.
Damn, son.
A lot of physical therapy, a lot of muscle re-stretching exercises, to where it really saddened me because at that point I was getting to the final issue of Catmandu I worked on was number 24. And
Hmm.
I really wanted to do the 25th issue. Just like in comics, uh, silver issues like that are big deals.
Yeah.
And I really want, and I was the main artist at the time, and I was looking so forward to that. And I couldn't do it. I could not physically draw at that
Yeah.
point. And so they had to find someone else to do it. And like to this day, just, I mean, thankfully for them, they found some old art that I had done, pinup art, that they
Hmm.
could put in the issue. But yeah, that one really hurt me not being
Hmm.
able to, for that one. And ever since then, my overall production level has dramatically slowed
Hmm.
to the point where people don't even realize I'm doing the Extinctioner comics anymore. I'm still
Hmm.
drawing them.
Huh.
But now I've changed my outlook and thinking of different ways of getting the work out there, on multiple levels. Like you said,
Hmm.
at that time, the web comics really began to pop up and appear. And that was a route that I didn't really take, more so because, I always viewed myself as a traditional comic book artist, not
Hmm.
so much a web comic artist. It is a whole different mentality that you have to get into to do web comics. And I commend those who can do it because you really have to produce frequently and continuously, um, on a very consistent basis. And with the injury that I got and starting actually working, like I had graduated, at that point in '99. So,
Hmm.
now I have an actual job. Just finding the time to be that consistent was just never a true option for me.
Hmm.
So,
All right.
yeah.
When it comes to your guest of honors, I mean, obviously you're a guest of honor at CACE. What did that stand for?
I don't know. It's a it's a Canadian. It was a Canadian con. I had a friend that was on the board, and um, back then I used to go to Canada a lot. It was
Mm-hmm.
a lot easier back in those days because all you needed was uh, birth certificate or driver's license to get over the border.
Yeah.
So like going for a weekend to Canada was a real big deal, and they just needed somebody to to be their guest of honor. I think we had like I don't know, there may have been like 50 people or something there. It was fun
Mhm.
though.
All right. So it was just convenience at the time, or
I,
like,
I probably think so. I don't know if that was like for it, but like I don't tend to take myself too seriously with stuff like that. I don't like to get a big head, so
yeah.
um,
I always,
I guess I was more active at that time too, so there was
huh.
a bit more prominence
I
in what we
I
were doing.
I do want to ask a question though. I mean, like this is 2002. I mean, um, obviously this is what's it, 4 years after the burned fur movement happened and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, there was a massive rift within the furry fandom, especially in America, mostly, I
Hmm.
believe, or at least within the Northern American sphere, in essence. And I would actually I want to do a little bit of research into this, but when it came to people who were guests of honor at places, like how many at this point were there other people who were what's the word, embracing people of different cultures?
I wouldn't say so, but again, like when it comes to cultural, from my perspective, and there's really
Yeah.
no real PC way to say it, but
Mm.
when you're a minority, you're always used to accepting other cultures because you kind of have no choice but to,
Yeah.
especially if you're going to be involved in things like science fiction type of genres.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like a given that you're going to be dealing with people who are not like you.
Mm.
For me personally, I think the furry fandom has been a great benefit to myself in that regard because
Yeah.
I've met a vast variety of just awesome people of different races, ethnicities, gender persuasions,
Hmm.
um, you name it, that I know had I just simply stayed here in Pennsylvania, I would have never met.
Yeah.
And
That's
for that, I'm always grateful for because I've made some great friends uh, who none of them are like me.
yeah.
Like my best friend is a Japanese man who doesn't even live in America. He lives in Japan,
Hmm.
and I would have never met him if fandom. So being more open minded towards other people has always just been a default for me. So when you get to and the burnt fur movement, to this day I'm still not 100% certain about what it truly was about because there were so many different perspectives.
There's like story about what's it, pornography being in the fandom, and or it was either it was pornography. It was also selling your art was another one. I just can't remember the other ones. Are there any other ones beyond the two, or are those just the two
I
most
remember
proliferated ones?
I remember pornography being like a really huge deal. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that the increase of adult art around I want to see the early 2000s, 2000 maybe like 2001, 2004 perhaps. Um, it was really getting up there.
Mm-hmm.
To where you have to always take a concept where the furry fandom was originating from to begin with. You know what I mean? Like we're coming from Disney, Don Bluth, Hanna-Barbera, kid-friendly stuff.
The wholesome
Yeah.
stuff, yeah.
Well, I don't even want to say wholesome, but like, I mean, if you ever watch any old school Warner Brothers, that
Oh yeah,
stuff
it
was
was
some
definitely not
questionable
wholesome.
stuff.
I mean,
Okay,
like Ren and
but
Stimpy,
clean,
Two Stupid Dogs.
yeah. Well, it was just clean in general. It wasn't until I want to say probably the comic Omaha the Cat Dancer
Mm-hmm.
is when you get more public anthropomorphic art being used and more mature adult uh, fashions.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, that's all many people were doing, and doing it to a point to, I always like to say Doug Winger.
Yeah.
Anyone?
Oh
Yeah.
goodness me.
He's probably the single most artist I would say that started that trend because he's the one that brought in the over exaggerated aspect of sexual art.
I'm still always going. I'm still always going to argue that anime was the thing that influenced us to begin to do that kind of stuff. But I mean, Doug
Oh,
Winger for all the crazy stuff he used to do.
yes, the Winger Doodles.
Yeah.
I think he passed away last year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Was it
he
last
did.
year or the year before that?
Recently.
I know it was a couple years ago, but recently, yeah.
Hmm.
But I think what made his work so stand outable is that for whatever you think of the subject matter that he was doing, the cat was good.
Yeah.
He was good with his general anatomy, even though he had really grasped hold of the beginning of the digital art.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like we're now moving away from more traditional art, and then like markers and designer 2 markers and all of that, Prismacolors, and now we're doing more computer coloring directly on a computer instead of scanning stuff. And he just had mastered effects and whatnot at the time that a lot of people didn't see, but then a lot of people wanted to emulate.
Yeah.
And I guess it was just getting like really out of control as far in the mindset of some people. So that created that backlash of the burnt fur. Now, I always found it funny because I'm not exactly a guy that takes furry and anthropomorphics all that seriously. To me, it's still just simply a genre of comic book art, and that's just how I approach it. It's comics or cartooning to me. Like, and I think also that's the burnt fur was pushing back against the concept of furry lifestyle. Because I remember that term suddenly starting to pop up a lot.
Lifestylers, yeah.
And it was like, well, what is a furry lifestyle? Like, how can one generate a lifestyle off of cartoon characters? Was the way I was looking at it at the time. And but like the vitriol that gained from that, it got really out of hand and became really ridiculous. Because ultimately, we're arguing about talking cartoon animals.
Yeah.
When it all boils down to, like it's great that it's an escape for us, for all of us, but you can't let that be the thing that consumes your life to the point it's the end all be all importance to you. There just got to be more important things going on in your daily than letting talking animals get you that emotionally wrapped up and wound up.
Yeah.
But I guess, I mean, like, the thing is that how many people that I mean, you, for instance, you're in a relationship with somebody else who's also a furry, for instance. I mean, Scratch, I think, in this conversation particularly, is the only one of us who doesn't have a person that is their significant other that is part of the fandom and has been met in the fandom.
Yep.
And I think that could be part of the reason why it becomes such a lifestyle, because when you do meet somebody online, for instance. And I mean, this happened to me on several occasions. In my younger years, on Furry Muck, for instance, fell in love with a whole bunch of people. Because at that point, it was a lot easier to love people. It was a lot easier to, get to know them, get to sort of understand things. And granted, I'm also naive at that time. Not thinking that technically I'm a 15-year-old boy talking to a person who's probably 40. But it didn't matter. The thing is that what mattered is that we had a connection, and there was something that we could actively speak about. There are many people that I had many crushes on at the time, who I still talk to this day, knowing that I can't go to America, so everything's safe, Hell, I mean, like, even in my 20s, there was a point that I was talking to a guy in California, two people who I was speaking to in California, and the one guy's like, you know what, I make 3 figures a month. I'll fly you over. I'm kind of sitting there going like, aha, I have a job or something like that. Like, no, there's no such thing as a holiday. Screw it.
Vincent Adult Man.
Okay?
It's like Vincent Adult Man. It's like, I have a job at the business factory.
Yes. But I mean, so it's difficult to be able to sometimes disconnect yourself, or sometimes in that, for that matter, bring yourself to take something as deeply as ingrained as that all of your relationships that you've had, like 70% of them were online. That's kind of how it feels for me. Scratch, we're not going to talk about that one that you had on the muck as well.
Yeah, let's not.
That was crazy, though.
Yeah, let's not.
I think everyone at some point of a certain age has fallen for somebody on a muck. But if I'm gonna give my philosophy on that, though, is it's not so much to be involved in any kind of fandom like this, especially be it comics, science fiction, whatever. You're already kind of starting off at the social deficit of being a little bit of an outcast. You're independent in your thought thinking. You're not a conformist. You don't exactly go around and follow the popular culture because you just don't feel like you fit in. But then to discover that you have someone else out there that also is not quite the conformist, that doesn't feel like they fit in either, but you have now found one commonality between that you can relate to. Well, it's all that one could hope for. Somebody that can understand me, doesn't judge me for who I am, and also has an interest in this thing that others would deem to be weird.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in a nutshell, is what has generated the furry fandom. Like, we all have this affinity, one way or another, at various levels of degrees, towards the concept of anthropomorphics. And notice I'm saying it in anthropomorphics and not necessarily furry, because ultimately it's still humanizing something. Like, when we select a fursona, we're not necessarily picking the fursona purely on, I like a dog, I like dogs, therefore I'm going to make myself a dog. It's what qualities of that particular type of dog as a human being that I like, that I put human qualities towards, and that I find ideal, and that I would like to find ideal in myself. Like, for me, when I selected a panther, panthers are solitary animals that only come around to socialize on rare occasions. And that's how I felt at the time when I selected the ebony leopard as my fursona. I was very, at being a student, surrounded in a school of white students, not not quite as athletic as others, but not a stranger to it either. I was definitely outcast among others of my kind because the kids I knew were more into sports, girls,
Basketball,
music, you name it. Whereas, I had an interest in that, but none of them were into comics at that particular age.
yeah,
the old stereotype, once you get to a certain age, comics and toys, you got to leave that stuff behind,
yeah.
So to discover that there's a whole bunch of other people who are also into that kind of stuff, oh man, that's really cool. And I can understand, but you still, the problem I find that a lot of people do is that they don't know how to compartmentalize that stuff to where they let that become all consuming of their desires of life. And then they become afraid to live life as life is. You know what I mean? Like they want everything now to conform to this idealized impression that they have in their head. And it becomes even more difficult to relate in the quote unquote real world.
Yeah.
And especially when you throw in the minority aspect, and I'm not just talking ethnic minority, I'm talking sexuality minorities, gender minorities. It like doubles in that regards for those people, because not only are you a minority, you might be even an extra minority in another,
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
To a degree, that's sort of the same applies to a lot of different things. Sort of, I think that's why a lot of gamers keep friends with only other gamers to a degree, because, I mean, sort of, there's already.
Well, you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to explain it to anybody.
Exactly.
A gamer knows what a gamer is. Like, I don't have to explain why I'm drawing this cartoon animal engaging in something that would be considered questionable to my wife, because frankly she does it better than I do. so like the shorthand is already there.
Yeah. It really does make a difference. It's like very much cutting out sort of, I almost want to call it like step one of getting to know someone. Like the whole playing the game thing. I don't know. My flatmate and I had a discussion about the concept of sort of different levels of getting to know someone on, like, in his case specifically, like a dating kind of way. And he always sucked at like part one, the breaking the ice, learning to sort of like sussing out the person the first time. It's like you completely skip all that if there's like a big, I won't call it niche, but like a vast shared interest, like gaming, like furry, like comics or whatever.
Right. Like, you don't have to hide your Maid Marian statue.
Yeah.
But when you bring somebody over who already into it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
you didn't have to close off the cupboard full of Funko Pop figures of Star Wars characters that you keep whenever someone comes around. That kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So, just to divert back, throughout the years that you've been in the fandom, like, have you ever had negative responses?
Yeah, I've had a few. More so, I find, due to preconceived notions of who I am. More so because, like, as I've grown and gone through college, and I want to say my college experience is probably the result of this. I used to be incredibly introverted. I did not like talking to people. I felt very self-conscious, and going through what I went through in college, it forced me to develop a more assertive nature of speaking up and speaking up for myself. So because that's the case, I have a bad habit of just telling people my opinion on topics. And more often than not, I'm more of a devil's advocate to where I might not necessarily agree with what someone else says or does, but I always try to find the reasons of the why people do what they do. Because one thing in our fandom I have found that as I continue to be in it, and frankly, I've grown a little bit more disappointed in it, is that there's a very, pun intended, herd mentality it's developing.
To what mentality?
A herd
mentality.
Oh, herd. Okay. Sorry.
To where the minute someone voices one opinion about a person, that opinion multiplies and triples to the point to where people don't even know why they're saying the things that they're saying about someone anymore, based on personal experience. They're just going on what the group has said.
Yeah.
And me, I at least I'll converse with you to find out if people are saying you're an asshole. Well, I'll talk to you to see if you're an asshole before I decide you're an asshole. And that's not always a popular thing to do. And as you know, when someone doesn't agree with you, more often, they'll use the shorthand way of trying to take a dig at you or insult you. Which to me is very lazy. Like I can find a way to insult somebody in multiple ways without. But then I because I've been like the nerdy kid in a sense, I've always had to learn how to verbally defend myself. So developing a quick wit was a definite survival tactic for a kid in high school like myself. So.
Yeah, that shit comes in handy.
And I kind of, and I like to say, the nature of the fandom of how people are relating to one another, with one another, has changed from when I got into it. Like for me, if you wanted to talk to somebody, you literally had to send them a physical letter. So there's just something about having to sit down and write to somebody that really puts a lot of cool on an anger than it would just hitting send on your email account.
Yeah.
Which is why the 24-hour rule is becoming more and more popular these days.
Oh yes, I definitely have to where if I'm angry at someone or something, I always tell them, you give me 24 hours and then, because the way I look at it is whatever happened yesterday, I can't change it, you can't change it. All we can deal with is the present. Now, if you're going to be a person that will hold that grudge and hold on to it, then that's on you. But me, my life is too short, and there are too many things that I want to get done to hold on to drama, which is usually why I'm like the last person in the fandom to know about something drama-wise that's going on, because I just don't care.
Yeah,
because you can't.
There's only so many hours in the day that you can care about bullshit, and that's quite a few, like very few hours in my day. Like, try to keep that as low as possible. I don't give a shit about which Kardashian said about who. Like, no one cares. No one should care.
Think of how much emotional energy it takes to still be mad at something someone did 10 years ago when, let's say, they were 18.
Yep.
As we all know, 18-year-olds think and operate way differently than an older adult does. So why are you still judging somebody on that time frame and not looking at what they're doing now?
Yeah. I mean, the question, obviously, this kind of leads towards where the fandom is sitting now, where you have over 100,000 people who one could, I don't know, loosely state as well-mannered people. When you have like not even a couple hundred, just around about 100 people who are, in essence, ruining it for everybody else with loud voices and things like that. I mean, it's weirder that it's actually kind of weird that what's the word? the soft, the smaller groups tend to have these massively large and almost unassailable like voices a lot of the time. I mean, we're looking at people like Foxler, we're looking at people like, you know, everybody from that movement. And weirdly enough, I really do want to speak to them, if it would allow to do that. But unfortunately, I've had Scratches has actually told me to not do it. I have
What was
my
the name
own
of it?
second like opinions on actively speaking to people like that, particularly because it's just as easy to bullshit around a particular topic, and I've seen it happen so often on things like Twitter, on, you know, responses to people, on open interviews by, say, people like Patch Packrat, for instance,
What was
where
the
you
name
kind
of
of
that
sit
group
there.
again?
Hey,
I'm sorry.
oh
What was
the
the name of the group again?
um,
Foxler.
Foxler he's the leader of Scratch. Help me.
I have no idea who you're talking about. Google
They're
it,
pretty
dude.
much Nazi furs in this.
Oh, the alt-right furs.
Oh.
Yes, the
Oh.
alt
Okay.
right furs. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And I mean, it's gotten to a point that
Oh, the
Twitter
furry
either
raiders.
speaks,
I think you're talking about the
yes,
furry raiders.
furry raiders
Furry
and the alt
Raiders.
right. Yes, exactly.
So
Can you
sorry.
bloody believe it? Um, Nazi
Now, see, that
furs,
now that's an example of people taking this way too seriously. But
way
Yep.
too serious. But the thing is, and this has happened on many occasions, there are furs who are literally getting death threats at this.
yes.
It's even gotten to the point where there was an interview where I think, if I'm not mistaken, Patch was attempting to find out whether Foxler um, was somehow involved in the 2014. Was it 2014 or was it 2015? The chemical
Oh,
bomb that was released. Yeah,
oh yeah, the chlorine bomb attack.
yeah, the
Oh
chlorine
yeah.
bomb attack. Was trying to figure that out, and like, is this how deep the rabbit hole goes? That you're willing to both put your political status to the idea that you're a talking animal.
Yeah. I was there for that. That wasn't fun.
Were
Lot
you
very
were you
late.
at were you there during the chem attack?
Yes, I was there. Fortunately, I was not in the area where it happened. Um, that was a really weird night because like it happened around, I want to say 12 a.m. Chicago time, and all of a sudden, you know, the alarms and stuff goes off. Which, frankly, if you've been to a furry convention, the idea of the alarms going off is damn near part of the tradition of FurryCon going
Mm-hmm.
experience. Especially at Midwest Fur Fest. At one point, there was a fire alarm almost every single year at those
Wow.
cons. But that one was odd because they funneled us over to the convention center, didn't tell us why we were going to the convention center, kept us there for hell maybe 2 hours almost. So I don't think we got back into that hotel till almost like 3 a.m.
Yeah,
Which, let me tell you, if you're an artist, that completely screwed up your following day.
yeah.
But I did have some friends who were in the area of that and got sick. But even to this date, I don't think it's ever truly been resolved as to what the
Who
actual
done it?
cause is, or who was responsible for
Yeah.
it. Rather,
Yeah.
they know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like what the cause was. I mean, we could pretty definitively tell what the cause was. Chlorine doesn't just appear in the air, but yeah,
Right.
who's obviously the case.
Yeah. Huh. Because again, like these things happen, particularly because some people find that, I don't know, the furry fandom is too accepting. How does that even happen? That is the general gist of this, or that, you know, all people really want is to have a very similar voice to other people. Anything along the lines of that, like to have credence, to have some form of, you know, I belong here kind of thing. Like that's literally all that's like, if you had to ask for prerequisites of what it is to be, you know, in the furry fandom, literally the only one is don't be a dick.
Yeah.
You know,
It's gonna
that
be.
was actually part of that. Now that you mentioned that, that was a part of what the deal behind the burnt fur movement as well, was the fact that it was believed that the fandom was becoming accepting of anything. And really, if you think about it, the fandom kind of is gotten to a point to where, I mean, anything goes now. It's not even about, in some cases, the anthropomorphic aspect of the fandom as a signature. I mean, if you got a group, furry will welcome it, and it's kind of like it's blessing and it's curse at the same time. It's acceptance, and people felt that, well, there's got to be some kind of parameters here of what we will allow to be associated with the fandom and what we won't, and that's where the giant disagreement came in, to where, like, who's going to be the one that makes that decision, and how does that decision get made? And that's where the big fight and a lot of that came from. I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know. I mean, there is obviously social behavior that I don't care where you are, just should not be acceptable. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. But again, that's my personal opinion, and I'm aware that my personal opinion isn't necessarily carried over to others. And realizing that is one of the issues that human beings in general have a problem with. That you have to learn that what you think is not going to be universal, and you just have to accept that fact. But some people can't.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I mean, we spoke with Tempo about the idea of the paradox of tolerance, which is like, if you're going to be tolerant of everything, then some people are going to exploit that. So you sort of have to be like intolerant of certain things, but then you're not really tolerant, like fully tolerant of stuff. So yeah.
Like, if I may, it's on this. It kind of goes back to my first con experience in a way. And my first con experience when we went to the convention in Cleveland, homosexual males, that was the first time I have ever met any. But we're talking about at a convention to where we're talking like the leather body strap wearing type dudes.
Oh.
And the making out in the comment areas, full on groping kind of stuff. Not your casual, I'm give my guy a kiss or something like that. I'm talking full on crotch grabbing.
Ooh, okay.
That probably would not be considered acceptable. and conventions coming down on that type of public behavior, I personally think is to the benefit and detriment for everyone involved. But obviously, you would have those people who were doing it would disagree. So that's like one aspect of how the fandom, at least as far as conventions goes, has changed. And I think to the better, because it makes it more open to everyone, to where one type of people's opinions aren't dominating the convention experience.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because I tell you, that was a culture shock. It was a culture shock, especially like being taken to a con by your mother, who is as religious a person as you could possibly think of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would not have flown.
Speaking of which, she seems to be relatively accepting of the entire idea, at least from what like conversation is told. Like, how does it feel to, I don't know, have your mom tag along? How did that feel?
I mean, as a teenager in 19, truth be told, but it's the only way that you can get to where you want to go, because you don't have a car. You know what I mean? But like, they kind of had a rule. They let me go and do what I wanted to do, and they pretty much either stayed in the hotel room or just went about doing their own stuff. So it's not exactly like it's something that we dramatically discussed. Well, my mother is very supportive of my work, though. to the point to where she wants me to see if I can try to get an animated uh, movie out of it, which I have no idea how to do. If they're listening,
Huh.
holler at a brother, you know. But but it's not something that I dramatically discuss with her because I just know how she is in that regard. You could say we have a nice truce on that matter.
Mhm.
We don't discuss the maturity level of any work that I do, but she is proud to see me do something productive because ultimately it's gotten me to where I currently am. So for that, I'm grateful. Like my first Anthrocon, which I think may have been took me, and she was a blast. Now my grandmother, she can roll with just about anything. Like she was cool. Like she brought. I remember our roommate. My roommate's at the con was literally next door to our door, and like they were invited. They loved her. They had a blast with her. But yeah, that was like back in I think when Anthrocon was in Valley Forge. I want to say like she drove me there. Now that so yeah, I've been blessed in that regard, having sort of people in my life for my artwork, thankfully, and I've met a lot of people of many different backgrounds and races who I don't know where I would be without. Like my from my first computer to was gotten to me by a friend, put it together for me. House Network is done by perhaps one of the nicest guys that I know in the fandom. Shout out to Commander Kitsune. He's a military fur who I look up to like crazy. Guy was an admiral, guys. This dude was like in charge of battleships, and like he sloughs it off like it's no big deal to me. And it's like, oh my goodness, that is so cool.
That's another series we want to get into. As
military
well. We've had 2 military firsts so far. If you could get us into contact, we would love
Commander
to have
Kisune,
him.
Jake Bunny out there. He's a tank driver. That cat drove tanks, man. And you talk to him about it, it's no big deal. And I was like, I don't know how you could just feel that. That is so cool, so cool. I respect that so much.
We had 2 military furs on here already. There are a couple. Scratch, I can't. I have to look through my contacts. It wasn't Rucus.
Yes, it was. One sec.
Rucus is an artist.
Oh, hold on. Give me 1 second. I have that here somewhere. Scrolling through the things.
A deer in disguise. Snarkbuck, was it? No, these aren't the ones.
Here it is. Brutus and Polaris.
There we go.
Sorry,
yes.
Rucus and Brutus. The names sounded similar in my head.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're definitely interested. Like we're game for like things like that because that's a completely and utterly untapped conversation, right there.
Oh yes.
And we love untapped conversations.
Yep. Like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't believe.
So I mean, I mean, obviously, this is just to start off the conversation because this is the first in the series of, for those of you who are listening, this is the first in the series of, I'm hoping, sort of either monthly or twice or once every 2 months, where we have more of this. We're probably it either more than that or less than that. It depends on how many people we can get to say yes. To conversations like this, to begin to sort of tap into different cultures. You have that Japanese friend of yours who, again, sounds amazing. These are all the kinds of people that we'd love to actually speak to. These are conversations that kind of need to be had, and it's amazing that you could be on. And obviously, we'd love to have you on again. We are just running out of time, so I'm kind of wrapping up weirdly. I don't know, like, Scratch, if you want to carry on, we can carry on.
No, I think it's time we should start wrapping up, unfortunately.
Okay. But yeah, I mean,
there's a very big imperative for us to continue going. Like, would you like to continue going, Avik?
Oh, I'm game if you are, and but I know it's getting really late for you guys.
It's only 9:30.
Well, late enough. I catch buses super early, so that's my only.
I wake up at 5.
I wake up at 5 as well.
I play music until 12.
Yeah, but you have an alien metabolism. We've established this.
Just young. Like, how old are you, out of curiosity?
Both of us are 29.
Oh God, yeah, you guys are super young. You got all kinds of energy.
You say that. You say that.
You say this exactly that. Like, I tried cycling this week. Don't.
Oh, I remember
for the first time,
like 29. Come on.
For the first time in 6 years, I got back onto a bicycle.
And how'd that go for you?
Okay, so I was trying to cycle for 4 kilometers. I got around about 2.
Yeah, well, try it at 40, and then try it at 41. I damn near almost died last year having to ride my bike from dropping my car off to get repairs. So I don't want to 29-year-olds.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a massive chip on my shoulder about bikes, just personally. Like, people who, like, I understand it as a mode of transport, but people who do it for fun, I do not understand those people. Like, I have a dear friend who does that, but it's like, come the fuck on, dude.
It's like, what are cars for, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't work all my life to get a car to keep riding a bike.
Yeah. Yeah. God gave us 2 legs to work the fuel pedals.
Is that so? I didn't realize. I thought they were for walking.
No. See, that's what the hippies want you to think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what the hippies want.
So yeah. Let's see. Japanese fursuits, gangster granny. Out of context, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Kink says, just because someone accepts you doesn't mean that you can be disrespectful to them.
Yeah.
I will say this last thing, if I can. One thing our fandom could definitely do to have some improvement on, though, and people might not like me saying this, is we have got to learn some social cues when it comes to interacting with other people. Because we have some incredibly socially unaware folks in our fandom for a variety of reasons, some of their own control and some that they cannot help. But especially when it comes to interacting with your favorite artists, you have to take into account that yes is not always going to be an answer to a request, because sometimes we are not aware that some requests are a little on the creepy side for some folks. And them telling you no is not an attack on your very person and being. It's just simply that it's not in their wheelhouse. Because the one thing about creating artwork is that you have to feel inspired by what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to get crappy artwork from that artist. So if you don't see that they are in their galleries, that they don't draw the particular thing that you like, don't think that you coming along is going to be the one that breaks the ice of that well of creativity with your request. So we have to learn how to better talk with one another. We have to be a little bit more aware, socially aware of how we interact with other people. And I think as a whole, we could really improve on that with everyone, frankly. The art of conversation is really lost when you spend the majority of your time behind a computer screen.
Yeah.
Or
I mean, that's
part. Sorry.
Yeah,
or just with people who think the same as you.
Yeah.
Oh God, yes, yes. And just because an artist draws something does not mean that they're personally into.
It's one of those things where a person sees that artwork and they're like, "Oh, cool! Do you want to RP this?"
No.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. The art or the oh God, I hate this term, but I'm going to use it. The trigger response. Right? Artist A draws something, and oh well, how dare you draw? No, I might not. I'm not. Sometimes it's a job.
Yeah.
Sometimes all the artwork is simply I need money to go get something to eat, so I'm going to step outside of my normal comfort zone just because I got to do it. But it doesn't mean that I support this thing, so please don't contribute that to the artist.
Huh.
Yeah.
We actually, like, now that I'm looking at the chat here, there's a whole bunch of guests all the way from America as well, which is actually amazing. There's Trace, of course, Drag Wolf. We've got a whole bunch of people with guests right next to them, but one of them is from an Air Force base, which is amazing.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Thank
apparently,
you for your service.
apparently the word military fur just whoop. Hey, yeah, that's awesome. Where the hell is Mama Renek from? Where is that?
Is that a place name?
It sounds like one, since there's an Austin here, there's Lincoln, Mama Renek. Never heard of that. I know a lot of the people here who are sort of classified as guests, you can make accounts if you guys want to join in the chat and mention, like, or, say hi and whatnot. This includes all of you. You guys can see the live chat. There's a little tab on the side that you can scroll out and you can have a look there and you can actually join in the conversation if you want. But we are sort of drawing to a close here. And yeah, it's been amazing having you on, by the way. I love conversation. Please.
I love this, guys. This stuff like this I've been wanting to do like forever. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity of being part of someone's podcast. This has been really awesome.
I mean, one of the things that maybe I'll talk to you about this afterwards. But yeah, so there's depths. Something that I would like to sort of ask about this. Scratch that also obviously depends on whether you're up for it as well.
Sure.
But yeah, so there are some. I've got ideas in my head, guys. So we're gonna go forward with this where and when we can.
Oh God.
Yeah.
When you get ideas.
And to all my other minority fur, I will say to you, you guys are so friggin' lucky, man, to be in the fandom like today as compared to when I got in there. Because I swear to God, like there were only three black guys in the fandom. it felt like at the time, and none of them were ever me. It was either Max Black Rabbit or Ken Sample, and that's who everybody thought you were when you were at a fandom. I mean, at a convention. So to the point to where we ended up making buttons that said "I'm not Max Black Rabbit." So those of you who are in there, you are very lucky, especially for those minority female fans out there. You guys are even luckier because there weren't a lot of female fans when I was young in my 20s in the fandom. So that is definitely, I say, an improvement that the internet has brought onto us. So rejoice and be happy of your blessings, you guys.
Be thankful, you little shit.
Wow. On that bombshell.
I'm just kidding. You know I'm surly. This shouldn't be news to you by now.
Yeah. Yote says that we shouldn't stop. Sudan says that we shouldn't stop. Sudan says again, please continue speaking. Halcyon is attempting to start an RP in the chat.
Tell Halcyon to stop, or I'm gonna kick his ass in July. Actually, don't even tell him. He can hear me. You can hear me, Halcyon. I guess we can roll this on until 10.
Until 10 sounds good.
Okay.
Another 20 minutes of chat.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's cool.
All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say something like from way back in the beginning of this interview. You mentioned you were part of the dwindling furry comics market. Where does the dwindling part of that come from?
Oh, well, when I was in the fandom, oh my God, the companies were aplenty, let me tell you. From Antarctic Press to Radio Comics, you had, I mean, there were just tons of in the store you can buy at your local comic shop furry themed comic books. I want to say probably thanks to the explosion of the black and white market that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles brought in. But like my fandom for me as a early 20 guy was those comics from, and I'm really going to date myself saying some of the names of these titles, from Hamster Vice to Preteen Dirty Jean Kung Fu Kangaroos.
What?
Panda Con, Xanadu, which is awesome.
Oh, I remember Xanadu. Xanadu is the name that I remember.
Amazing. Telltales, which is still coming out, actually. Furlough, Wild Side, Wildlife, Genus, the first adult anthology furry comic to my knowledge.
Black Sad, I suppose.
Black Sad? What?
Black Sad?
No, Black Sad is recent. Black Sad is very, very recent. Okay. No, these for Fusion Chicken. Like, yeah, you just name it. They were all over the place. And when I started my comic, it was a bit of a niche because my comic's a superhero comic. And there really weren't any furry superhero themed comics out there. For one, Radio Comics, which was like the main furry comic publisher, kind of had like a submission rule to where you were not allowed to send in superhero themed comics to their anthology for publishing because they were not going to accept it. So those books were a lot more military themed, slice of life, more traditional science fiction, but no superheroes. So I think that's why my book at the time kind of caught on a little bit of a peg of a space that was missing, because the only other furry superhero book I can think of personally would be like DC Comics, Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo crew, Beatrice Rabbit, and Fusion Chicken. Oh, and Savage Squirrel were the only kind of superhero. Savage Squirrel was like Punisher by Kanjarna.
But a squirrel.
No, Savage Squirrel. It's Savage Squirrel. And I can never say his name. His persona is a giraffe. He does a lot of the adult comics with oversized body parts and whatnot. Very funny because none of them are ever truly serious comics. But anyway, and I want to say roughly around 2006, the mainstream publishing and distribution of those books just slowly started to disappear. To where now, if you want to get furry comics, you kind of have to almost go to a con or an online website and order direct. Because, you know, I think the way people consume the media has changed now. Because, like, you know, I mean, I'll be honest. Why wait a couple months to get a book when people are putting webcomics up every week?
Yeah, that's true. Short attention spans and all that.
Well, that you no longer have to worry about them. Like, you don't have to go to a publisher anymore. Your material out. Like, because when I was coming up, you had to submit your to somebody in order for somebody to actually be able to see it. But now you can just put it on your online gallery or get your own website or something. And boom, instant followership. So.
I still have to work for the followers, though. It's not.
Yeah.
True.
The method of
True.
distribution is different, but you still have to work for the attention, for the eyeballs.
It is just it is easier to find it though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, like, what was it? There's still the Belfry still exists, for goodness sake.
Oh right. The
Oh, is that
Belfry.
still running for real?
Hey,
I didn't know that was still running.
I think it does. I am if I'm not mistaken. Let me actually just check that out because I remember it was running a couple of years back still. Belfry.
If it is, those who are listening, check that stuff out, man. You guys, there is so much stuff that you guys are missing that you truly need to be exposed to. There are
Popping
a lot
the
of
link
creative
now.
people in our fandom that do not get the attention that they deserve because, frankly, they don't have what's sort of becoming a cookie cutter, glossy and color style with the anime androgynous character design.
Yeah, it's actually still running.
Awesome.
And it's, weirdly enough, the Belfry webcomics, or like it's belfrycomics.net, but weirdly enough, it looks exactly the same way that it looked the first time I found it all the way back in 2004. It hasn't changed, not a bit.
When you come up with a great design, why mess with the wheel, right?
Yeah. I've also posted in our chat here.
No one came up with good web design back in the early 2000s. Even less
Hey.
so the 90s. I'm just saying.
True. I'm not going to argue with you on that.
What's awesome about the Belfry is that you can still submit comics to it. You can enable PG filters. You can filter through for whatever kind of comic you're looking for. Look for most subscribed new comics, whether they have adult intentions in them, language, violence, anything along the lines of that. You can literally just go for that. There's funny pages. Oh, goodness me, I haven't been on here in years, actually. Like 2 or 3 years, I haven't touched the Belfry.
Yeah, just think of the stuff that you're missing out on. Like,
yeah,
and that's what I liked about furry fandom when I first joined too, was the variety of art styles. Like, we're really getting to a point to where a lot of artists are mimicking a lot of the quote unquote popular furs. So it's becoming interchangeable. Like, artist A can easily be replaced with artist B if artist A decides not to come around anymore. The art styles are becoming, and like I said, I'm more into it for the art. So, for me, I'm more of a, if you could create a character that I want to follow their exploits of, then you've got a fan for life. But if all you do with your art is just create pinup character after pinup character after pinup character, and like with new character over and over, and you have nothing reoccurring and consistent, I don't care how good your artwork looks, you're gonna bore me. Like, give me something that I can relate to, like a character that I can follow, that I can grow to care about.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is an aspect I would say that a lot of our fandom is starting to lose. Like, we used to have like, you know how like certain genres have characters. Like, when I say science fiction, I say, name me 3 science fiction characters. What would you give me?
Spock.
Yeah, Spock.
Okay.
Anakin, like Luke Skywalker,
Okay.
and who else is sci-fi? What's the other big thing?
Wait, I got one, but I've forgotten his name. Flash Gordon.
Oh, Flash Gordon.
Okay. All right. Wow, you went old school with that one. All right. Now, give me 3 furry fandom characters.
Ozzy from Ozzy and Millie.
Yeah, but wasn't he more just in the realm of comics more so than like the actual furry fandom? I kind of see where you're going with this argument, though.
Yeah.
But you see my point, right?
Yeah.
Like, when I was there, we had Jack Salem. We had Chester the Ringtail.
Chester.
I want to say the last overpopular Sabrina the Skunk.
Of course, Sabrina. I forgot about her.
The last
That
one
was
I would
Max.
say that big popular would be Zigzag.
Yeah, Zigzag,
yes.
of course. But wasn't that all Max Black Rabbit?
No, believe it or not, Zigzag is Max, but Sabrina is Eric Schwartz.
Oh, right,
Eric
Eric W.
has
Schwartz.
brought
Yeah.
in Zigzag into the Sabrina comic, so I can see why people would
Okay.
mistakenly think that. But the point is, think of how old those characters are. How far back that you had, even when you said Ozzy, think of how far back that character last was of prominence.
Yeah.
I couldn't name. There are only maybe a handful of current day artists who have created characters that I can flat out just bring out and remember. Like you have maybe Peanut and Great from
Yeah.
House Pets. You have Puzzle from Cadiff's. I can't think of the name of the book, but Puzzle the Giraffe.
All right, yeah. Well,
and see, even I'm struggling.
The Lackadaisies character.
Okay.
Lackadaisy.
Oh God, yes. Oh, how can I forget that? The Lackadaisy characters. Though it's more, even with them, it's more like unless you're straight up following it, it's more the concept of Lackadaisy as a whole than a character as specific. Same with the Dream Keepers. Like I've been seeing a lot of those characters popping up, but it's a handful, and that's a problem. I personally feel as for our fandom, that's a problem because it doesn't make it a genre that could grow anywhere beyond the small pocket of people that we are.
Mm.
As far as a true genre.
Mm.
Like for I would say furry will always be furry because I always like anthropomorphic animals. But like, how did Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde become so big when we had Judy Hopps and Nick Wilds for years?
Jason Bateman. We were missing Jason Bateman.
Right. Apparently, we got to get some good voiceovers. But I mean, like a character like Zigzag, she has been around for over 20 years now. And you say the name, and people still will automatically know who that is. Who's the current artist that's making something like that?
Mm.
And why aren't they?
Yeah. But I mean, what about like Jay Naylor's comics, for instance? Better Days and Original Life.
He definitely has a following. That is hardcore. But again, he's still of the old school guard too, though.
Yeah. I mean, the last Better Days comic was in 2009. The last Original Life comic was in 2016. And he was literally doing a whole bunch of other things, and then he kind of just dropped away.
No, he's from what I understand is more Patreon now, and he's got a big following there.
Mm-hmm.
Really big following. But like he did, I'll give it to him. He worked hard. He built up that following, and he earned it.
Mm.
He earned it. Through his hard work and the dedication to his characters specifically. Like, he kept bringing his characters and kept using them.
Yeah.
And the problem with a lot of artists now is that they make some really cool, interesting stuff, but then do absolutely nothing with it. They're just characters for one picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's really sad, actually, if you think about it. Like,
and I love characters, man. I love characters. Now, I take what is his name? The Batu character. Killing me. What is the name of? I follow him in everything. It's like Batu? This little blue alien, chubby, like rat-like character named Batu. Was it Glen Panda?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah. His comic work that he's been putting out recently, fantastic looking, man. I love it. Glen Panda. I am such a fan of that. The story he's doing with, because he's building that character up. He makes you sympathetic towards the character. That's going to be a character to watch in the fandom.
Yeah. What about Katya from Prequel?
See, I believe so, but again, see, Prequel, I still feel prequel. The little yellow cat girl.
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah.
that more like gaming though?
It is kind of a
Because
lot like that.
it's based off. Isn't that? It's based off of Elder Scroll, right?
Yeah, sort of. She's a
All right.
Khajiit.
Right. So I don't know. For one, it's not a character. It's not an original. Oh, please forgive me saying it like this. It's an original character, but it's not an original concept character. If you understand what I'm saying, it's derivative off of something. I'm talking about like 100% from scratch. Like Red Equinox. That's the name of the comic. Red Equinox by Glenn Panda. If people who are listening are not checking that out, find his gallery or his Twitter page and
Pop a link,
or
and then I'm going to post it in the chat.
all right, I will indeed, because I mean I love it. The coloring style, the art style is just, to me, as a comic fan, fantastic. There you go.
Speaking of sort of comic artists, when was the last time Vincent Suzukawa did anything?
Vincent who?
The guy who did the guy who did ISO and Class Menagerie.
Class Menagerie. Okay. Yeah, you got me with Class Menagerie. Oh wow, I don't know.
Now you're digging, dude.
Yeah, like Menagerie stopped ages ago, like when we were still in high school, I think.
Menagerie came to a very clean close, though, and it's weirdly enough. And this is actually, for those of you who are listening, I remember we had our conversation with House Pets artist Rick Griffin. He was also mentioning that eventually something like House Pets must come to an end, and I'm seeing that in this final arc here. Honestly, it's kind of it's giving me heart palpitations sometimes. Kind of sitting down going like, what am I supposed to do with my Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays when that suddenly just disappears?
Well, it's also becoming evident that he is evolving and he's creating characters that he wants to explore on other ways. But again, he's still creating characters. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's still creating characters, and we have grown an interest in them because we've grown with them as much as they have grown. And House Pets is a very good example because, like, if you look at how that started from both art design and just general story concept to what it's now evolved into, it's almost hard to believe that it's what it is.
Sorry, you cut out there a little bit. Just repeat that last bit.
Oh, I said it's hard to believe that it is evolved from what it is now, what it started out as, to what it now currently is. It has really changed, both in style and the characters. You feel like they have grown up from being goofy kid-like characters to now having relationships between themselves that have meaning to them.
And what is actually very, very awesome is that it still always calls back to the original kind of ideology. Like this particular arc, for anybody who just randomly started following but never took the time to read through the how many years of like pre-story to this arc, like it all the way calls back to the idea of hats and how those hats define the characters themselves.
Yeah, and I had to go and look that up because for a minute I don't get these hats. Like, what's going on?
They used to wear paper bags to take on particular characters and characteristics of those characters when they were randomly having like role play sessions, to put it bluntly.
Yes, you're right.
And now in this current story arc, they have hats that give them particular powers in what they're looking for. Like that for me is
a long
like
callback.
It is so awesome. I remember like I've made that connection today, like now, but I'm kind of sitting here going like I'm having an epiphany moment, but that's amazing.
But you know what? That's a reward to the fans who have followed, because you got that. Me, because I've been following it off and on, I was confused. But then now I'm like, man, all right, you told me that. Now I can look.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see more from our fandom. Give us more characters. Like we got a lot of amazing, but it's like untapped potential that we're not dramatically doing anything for. I mean, adult art is cool, people. It's awesome. Imagine how much more awesome it would be if you give those characters in those situations something that people will give a darn about and want to learn more about.
Yeah.
Along with the adult material.
Character design is all well and good, but we
sorry.
want character development.
Yes.
Right.
Halcyon actually says the following. I would say for a lot of people who give art, writing, music, make the mistake of not being patient enough to allow for any form of following or longer-term character to develop. Starry-eyed, with hopes and ambitions that lose half their steam sometime in, specifically speaking from experience with their own social circle. It's kind of, I would agree to that. Like, the younger they start a lot of the time, the more and more they tend to fizzle out.
It's because
nowadays.
It's the internet. Everything comes quick. So if you aren't getting the following that you want as fast as you want, then you lose interest in it. I mean, I have been doing Extinctioners literally now, because I started that before I actually got to a company. My first Extinctioner comic was drawn in 1993.
That's impressive.
So I've been drawing. right. So I've been thinking about and drawing the same characters for that long. Like, I would do the math, but right now it's not in my head at the moment. But but that's a long time to stick with something and stick with a concept. And for me, it has a definitive end, and I'm just determined to get to that end, no matter how long it takes me to get there. But I will say I find it funny that at one point there were people online that were like, "Oh, well, this won't be around for more than 5 years." And lo and behold, we are some 20-something years later.
Yeah.
Kudos
I
for
think,
keeping it up. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
As
No
soon
doubt.
as I went to university, I just like stopped drawing altogether.
I have to. They won't stop playing around in my head unless. So whether there was a furry fandom or not, I would be doing this.
That's something that one of our recent guests, one of our writers that we had on here. Of course, I'd be scrolling through Twitter to try to find out who it actually was, and that's going to take ages. Rewritten, not that one. That was Yaku.
Yeah.
Darn it.
Let me take a look. Always Grey in Winter.
Always Grey in Winter, yes. He was actually
Mark Engels.
Mark Engels, yeah. He was at one point talking about these characters that just wouldn't leave him alone. Like, he would have them in his head and they just wouldn't leave him alone until he actually started writing the story for them.
Yeah, and it's easier for a writer. So a pure writer, I think, because you don't have to worry about the visuals. But as an artist, I have more ideas in my head than I ever get on paper.
Yeah.
And because my form of storytelling is visual, I'm quite sure there will be stories that will never be told or concepts that I will eventually forget.
Yeah.
But even then, I got to do it. I just have to. It gives me peace of mind. Like, it's a Zen thing, the process of creating. And I think that's why, like, some people see me rant a bit on pages. Like, why do people steal other people's work or don't give them the respect of being able to decide where they want their work to be displayed and here and that? Like, I often write journals on my FA page about that topic. And it's because I don't think people realize the process of creating and what goes into it. It's a far more personal experience than few things you can do. And because you are literally putting your all into what you're doing. From any doodle, it's like a piece of the artist's soul, in a sense, that they're allowing others to see. Because otherwise, there's no other way to see it, be it in the written format or the visual format. And as the creators, you're going to be protective of the things that you create. Because like I said, it's a piece of you that's coming out of you in some form or other. It's just like you're not going to let somebody come to you and just slap you in the face. You know what I mean? You're going to try to block that slap, right? Yeah. So you're not going to let someone just randomly come up to your work and just do whatever they want with it. And I think that's a concept that others, when they don't create, don't understand, or those who do create but don't have that kind of personal connectivity to what they create have a problem with understanding. So that's why you see a lot of artists sometimes flip their shit, in a sense, when someone is redistributing their work, or because like I'm willing to bet a vast majority of artists who complain about their work being redistributed, if someone had just simply came to them and asked if they could do it before it was done, they probably would have said yes.
Yeah.
I think like the funny thing about the furry pay side, the paywall concept, that frankly started with Sexy Fur, with Jerry Bernal. I remember when that started, he would post, "Please do not distribute my work," and then people would start doing it just to be a dick.
Yeah.
And then he would ask politely again, like, "Please don't redistribute my work, guys. Like, I'd rather keep it in one spot, because it's more beneficial to me, if I can have people come to one location. Plus, when people redistribute, they don't ever say where they got the work from the beginning. You know what I mean? So the concept of, it's free advertisement for the artist, it's a little bit of BS. You're not saying where you got the artwork from in the first place. But they wouldn't do it. So he's like, all right, screw it. I'll make you pay for it then. So have those people simply either asked him before doing it, or just simply kind of, followed his wishes as the creator, we probably wouldn't have as many pay sites right now as we do have that are furry related. Because once somebody starts one thing, then you get followers and comments.
Yeah.
So like the pirateer mentality created the very thing that they complain about in the first place.
Irony upon irony.
Jeez. But, and I mean, weirdly enough, I mean, you're talking about crediting the artist. We recently on our con webpage, for instance, because this year we're doing a Wild West theme, because we found a venue that has
It's got trains.
It's got trains. Yes, it's got trains. Yeah. So we actually got a.
How does that work over there, by the way? You're in South Africa.
Yeah.
Wild West. So, like, how is that kind of thing viewed there, concept-wise?
Concept-wise, it's just a cool concept. It's that's literally all it is. When you hear Wild West, you're like, yeah, this sounds like a great concept.
Yeah, our version of Wild West was a little bit less. Let's call it less appealing.
Bloody.
Less marketable. Less marketable.
Yeah, our version of the Wild West, it would be the Wild East.
Okay.
Well, they started in the Western Cape and headed east. Yeah. And then kind of also went to KwaZulu-Natal, because that was also kind of taken from the boats back to India, or back from India, and they used that as a port as well. And then they kind of like converged onto the center area, and then said, "Oh no, this is ours. Do you have a flag?" Kind of thing.
Dude, like we didn't have to go into the East Indian Company and all that jazz. I'm just talking about the Krutek.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Any case, So speaking of, crediting particular artists, one of the pictures on our website is currently one by Eskiworks or Wolf Nymph.
Okay.
And literally, like, our vice chair said, he found this picture and he wants to put it on the website, and went to Wolf Nymph, sent them a message saying, can we use this picture for our website? We'll credit you for it. And they were like, yeah, sure, credit us, and just credit us under this name and not that one. And we did that, and everything's cool. Like, it's fucking easy.
Yeah. You'd be really surprised at how many artists would be like, yeah, sure, I'd love to do that if you take like 5 minutes to just type out a letter to ask them.
Yeah.
It's manners, etiquette. It's something like I said, like the mentality has changed. That like when I began the fandom, you had to write a letter to an artist. The process of having to think through that kind of thing, because things are so shorthand and immediate now, like we are losing manners, social manners when it comes to stuff like that. And we could have so much less drama in our fandom if people could learn to just simply be polite without saying, well, I don't want to be PC. Like, well, being PC isn't, like, I always say, like, those who argue with the PC argument is just an argument to say, I just want to be an ass.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, all it takes is an email. And there's the other problem that we have. What kids, and I'm saying kids, what kids at around about 13 to 14 should begin to learn is at least the basic format of what an email is supposed to look like, so that by the time they're 18 to 20, when they're going to eventually send off that CV or whatever, if they can't get to college, that it looks, somewhat presentable. And look, I hate business English with a passion. Taught it for like 3 years now. I hate the idea. I hate the concept. And I hate the fact that we have to speak to one another like robots in like some sort of corporate puppet kind of way. But it's necessary because it's about decorum. And if you can't have decorum, then what's the point of trying to talk to somebody as though they're like somebody that you look up to, for instance? I mean, imagine this. Like, so you're a guest of honor. 3 years, or not 3 years running, but 2002, 2006, 2013. And I approach you with, like, yo, buddy, what's up? Et cetera, et cetera. I remember the email that I sent. And I was trying to be as, forthcoming with both information and so on and so forth. If I just come up to you and said, look, we're doing a podcast, are you in or out?
Yeah, that would be like, okay, yeah, no, I'm out.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Your email, I had, for full disclosure, I hadn't heard of you guys beforehand, and
Nobody ever does.
And because of that, like things like that, I'm very wary about, because we are now in a troll like era.
Yeah.
People try to take advantage of you, so you kind of have to be a little bit more defensive with that kind of thing than you would have been years ago. But like the way that you guys approached it, I liked it. It was very professional, and you made it sound like it was fun, which this has been. So
professional is a word I don't hear often.
Especially with something connected to me.
Just connected to this channel in general.
Yeah. But I think, look, I mean, on this note, I know that we've gone 15 minutes over the time that we first put down already. But what we would love to do is that we would love to have you on again and just talk about this more, because again, this is beginning to open that door that I'd like to begin to open, and begin to like discuss these things, the discursive nature of being different, for starters, being able to either fit in or find a niche somewhere that doesn't go and fly against that which you as a person technically are. Some people do it for the troll of it. Some people don't. Some people do it because they really actually enjoy the people that they talk to. It's one of the reasons why those podcasts exist. If there's like 20 people who are listening, or if there's 400 people listening, it doesn't matter. The content is always going to be the same. And it's up to people to like it or not. And that's kind of what it's like being a human being, isn't it? I mean, you're either going to like me or you're not, but maybe just give me a chance.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, you'll eventually be in somebody's back order.
Yeah.
Here's something, and I'm like, hey, I wonder what these guys put up.
Mm.
Just like artists, when you're at a con or something, you're always somebody's first con experience.
Yeah.
So don't be a dick.
Yeah.
You know, like, because if that person's coming up to you, they obviously like something about you. So treat them with a little bit of patience.
Yeah.
It is the simplest axiom of life. Just don't be a dick.
Yeah. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than looking up to somebody, then you meet them in real life and complete asshole.
Yeah. That's where that dead expression of that dead on the inside expression of never meet your heroes comes from.
Yes.
Oh. Oh, right. Somebody was talking about the giggle in the background.
Oh, yes. My wife, Kayla, is finally up, and she's now sitting in the room with me.
Somebody actually mentioned that the chuckle in the background, it was very, very sweet. Yeah. There it is. Cool.
Yeah, maybe next time I can get her on with me.
It would be great. It would be amazing.
Yeah.
But beyond that, Alias mentions, I'm not sure if I'm saying this correctly, Aelius.
Yep, Alias. Hi, okay. Alias.
Says words to live by in respect to some of the things that you've been saying. Sudan says you are her spirit animal.
Oh, thank you. I'm very easily embarrassed, but I do not. I'm weird. I literally do not take praise very well. Like I'm incredibly paranoid with that kind of thing. So that is very, very nice.
No, I completely understand that. It's like someone says, "Oh, I really like your the last thing you drew." And like, who sent you?
Sudan says, "Hey, Kayla," in all caps and large amounts of ease. Halcyon wants her to say hi.
They want you to say hi.
Hi.
There we go.
Nice.
Awesome. Okay. We're definitely going to pick up this conversation in the near future. Hopefully within this year. Definitely within this year.
Yeah, for sure. Come on.
Yeah, but there's so much content to actually cover, and this actually helps me sort of. Hey, we found out who the guy from the Air Force Base is. Surname Rupert, I think. I'm going to give the full name. Not sure if anybody knows them.
Cool.
Huh.
Regardless.
Okay,
hi.
Guys. Hi. So yeah, I just want to run down the names that I can see here. There's Taka, there's Trace and Kit. There's Yote, there's Sudan, there's Kink, there's Joshua, there's Jacob, there's Halcyon. Guests from all over here. I've got Moscow and Westlake Stevens.
Hi, Taka.
These names, guys, where do you guys even come up with names like this?
I just cheated. I just went with names that I actually were going to have.
No, I'm just thinking about the names, like the town names here. Cleveland's easy.
Yeah, by the way,
I'm from Erie.
Yeah.
So.
Mamaroneck is a town in New York. It's not like anywhere in Europe or anything. It's a place in New York.
Why?
Between Larchmont and Harrison.
Okay, Larchmont is a little bit of a stretch. Harrison is just the name of a guy.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. I'm going to say that maybe it's a Native American name.
I don't know. It's New York. I don't think it can be super Native American, to be dead honest.
Yeah. You do realize that like New York was bought for denada.
Oh right, I forgot about that.
Pennies. beads and gems. What the hell? I don't know. Any case, guys, we are going to be calling it a night here. Obviously, those of you guys who are online, we're going to be playing a little bit of music until 12. Depending on how long this actually goes on for, I could probably push to 1 o'clock. That does, however, mean that I get to sleep at around about 1:30 because my brain doesn't shut down for an hour.
Get to bed, dumbass.
No, I have a responsibility.
You have a responsibility to play music until 12. That's always been your responsibility. Self-care is important, dude.
Sleep is for the weak.
One cannot pour from an empty cup.
It's okay. It's not like I need to teach tomorrow or anything like that.
Just enjoy it while you're capable of. Once you hit 30, all of a sudden like a switch comes on and that turnaround time dramatically drops on you.
Thank you for that. For me, that's like a few months.
Well, there you go. Happy birthday.
Yay.
Shout out to Mr. S from Jake Bunny, the longtime fan and former army brat.
There's your tape driver.
There we go. Okay.
I want to talk to that guy. He's awesome.
Yeah. Just by the way, Jacob, if you're listening, we want to talk to you. Obviously not like, what's the word, stalkerish or anything like that. Hey, dude, in chat, we need to listen to you. Come here. Okay. Alrighty, guys. I'm apparently a robot.
Yeah, you're sort of, Discord's doing funny things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Lamont, for joining us this evening. Ebony,
this has been awesome.
Yeah, it has really been interesting. We really do appreciate you coming on again. We'd love to have you on again as well. And these conversations are extremely important, I believe.
Well, thank you guys. I enjoyed it. I'll now be able to get a nice, solid night of sleep without all the nervous energy. Now that I know this was a lot easier than it would be. So, anytime.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah. Thank you guys for joining in, and thank you to our guest for being on. This has been really fun, and we will check you guys again next week. Do we have a guest lined up for next week? To be continued. To be pending.
Watch our Twitter. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday-ish. You'll probably see an update at some point.
Yeah. Very professional. Yeah. Very professional of us.
Yeah, I've given a 3-day window.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys.
Alright. See you guys. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening, guys. Cheers, out.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.